So quick little video today, and in it we're going to have a go at producing a 3mm scale turnout with all the chairs, and this is in response to something which came up on the Templot Club forum, and I offered to have a go at something for a chap by the name of John who asked a question on the forum. Now, I told myself I wasn't going to make any videos in January and focus my time putting together some Templot resources for the benefit of everyone, and this has sort of come along and distracted me, so I thought whilst I'm doing it I'll make a video out of it. Now, those resources I mentioned are going to be online. I'll show you the web page on the screen now. That's a website I'm putting together, and I'll just show you briefly what I'm doing with it. The idea is there will be a hopefully fairly comprehensive set of plug track tutorials, and you'll be able to click on various links and open up pages and hopefully find some sort of useful information to help you as you sort of experiment with the system yourself. Now, I'm going to put one or two other bits on there. As it is the pages, I think the material is complete, but I haven't uploaded everything onto it yet, so expect to see that develop over the next 2 or 3 weeks as I finally get all the bits and bobs uploaded. But I thought whilst I'm doing that, why not sort of incorporate this in, and it's a good opportunity for me to mention it to you. I was going to sort of save it till it was finished, but I'll mention it now whilst we're onto this. So without further ado, we'll get straight into it and open up the file that John had sent me in Templot. So begin, and I've opened up the template that John has sent me. I'm selecting timbers only to export it to laser cut the timbering. Now, in the settings box, clicking on 2D curve, and the first thing we're going to do is set the curve setting. Now, I'm going to leave that set to the default of 0.2. The 3D socket undercut extra curve, I'm going to leave that to its default 0. Now, the next thing we're going to have a look at is the nibs and snibs. Now, these are quite an interesting thing. The nib length and width, well, the nib refers to the little bit that protrudes out of the end of the timber, and the snibs are little diagonal lines that radiate from the nib. Now, I'm setting the space to 0. We'll talk about the nibs and snibs in just a minute because it'll make more sense. Now, the nibs and snibs aren't visible on the trackpad, so what we can do is follow this little menu tree and select timber and sockets curves, and that will display on the screen. Now, if I zoom in, you can see the snibs are those little angled lines, and they intersect, and what they're going to do is provide like a little fret so that all that timbering remains attached. Now, by setting the snib space to 0, we don't get a little join between the snibs, so the waste between the timbers will drop out. Now, that'll make a little bit more sense in just a minute, so bear with me for now. But if I zoom in here, you can see that each timber has snibs. There's northeast, southeast, southwest and northwest, and that relates to those 4 angled lines. They are our snibs. So we can now export this, give it a suitable file name. Now, I've already done this once before, so I'm just going to click on that name there, click save, and there we go, job done. So that's now exported as a .dxf file, and I can open Lightburn because that's the software I'm using. Another one is Laser Gerbil. They both work more or less the same. Click import, and we'll find that file we've just saved, and it will open up for us so we can have a closer look at it. And there we go. So that's our file, and we can see the nibs and the snibs, especially if we zoom in. And if we have a look here, we can see there is no gap with the nibs or the snibs. So I've brought that self-same DXF file into my CAD software, and I'm just having a closer look at it. And if we look at the far right hand side of the template, we could see that one of the snibs here overlaps the timber. Now that's not very good. The laser is going to cut into that timber, so I'm going to make a little modification to it. So choosing a line tool first of all, I'm just going to draw a line between these two snibs, and then with the delete tool just nip away that little bit that overlaps. Now it's worth mentioning here that in the next release of Templot, I believe it will be possible to make alterations to individual snibs within Templot itself. However, I thought I'd include this here just to show you to be aware of, snibs overlapping and can cause problems. Now I'm also drawing a quick box around here just so that when this cuts out, the template itself will be severed from the sheet material. So having enclosed the template in a kind of a bounding box, the next thing I'm going to do is just engrave some detail onto this piece of plywood. Now this wouldn't normally be necessary, but as I'm going to put this template in the post and send it off, I thought we might as well put a little legend on it. So I'm just sort of writing out what the thing is. So there we go, it's a 3mm scale template. That's a bit big, so I'm just going to come in here and change the height of my text, change it to something a bit smaller. There we go, and that looks alright. But whilst we're at it, whilst we're on the internet, let's shamelessly put my own website on as a little bit of a gratuitous self-promotion. There we go, type it in, makeitminiature.co.uk, click OK, and there we go. So that's now pretty much ready to cut. So what I'm going to do is export that again as a .dxf file. It isn't necessary obviously to put all this writing on, but there we go, I'm doing it for someone else. I want it to look nice. Incidentally, the bounding box, I could have done that in Templot itself. I could have drawn a background shape as a rectangle and exported that too. Anyway, there we go, let's give it a name, click save. Okay, so we could jump back into Lightburn now. Now that's what I had previously, so let's open up the new one. There we go, so there's our new version. Now I've deliberately left or made a mistake here, and the reason is I just wanted to show something else that we could do in Lightburn. So it's necessary for those nibs and snibs to kind of be connected and form a perimeter all the way round. By doing so, we can sort of snap all the waste out. Now that's all fine as it is, but what I like to do is stick an extra little line along the ends so that the waste drops out and from alongside the final timber. There's no reason for doing it, but just to show that we can in Lightburn draw those lines in. So we put one over there, I'm going to stick one here as well, and it'll just ensure that that little space by the end of that timber will drop out. Now that's entirely ready to cut. So in addition to the timbers, we're also going to need the chairs, and what we need to do is extract those chairs from this template. Now, John has already set up the experimental chairing by selecting this little box here, and if we click on here we can have a look at the chair settings he's after. Now he wants all chairs to have solid outer jaws and keys. He wants one-piece chairs, not two-piece chairs. So we'll leave everything as it is and carry on from there. Now what I'm going to show you here is it's not necessarily the correct way of doing it, but I'm going to show you it anyway. Now before I show you exactly how we're going to bring those chairs out, what we'll do is we'll just export this file quickly and just have a little look to kind of preview what we're going to do. Now I could have hit the preview option, but I've decided to export it in one piece. Now John has been messing around with Plug Track and he's been doing exactly what I'm showing you here, and he's been exporting them all the chairs in one piece, just as I've done here, and printing those in one go on the bed of his printer. Now it works, but you can't get them all on the printer bed in one go. So what we're going to do, just as I did in a previous video, is we're going to break this up into smaller bits, but I'm going to simplify the whole process for the purposes of this video. So we're back in Templot, and what I'm going to do is store the template that was there. That will give me a second one, like a copy. And what I'm going to do, if you remember from my previous video, I'm going to press the 3 key, where that will set up the blanking length. I'm going to reduce the length of that template so we've got just the crossing chairs there. Then I'll click on our original, save it to the background, which will create a copy, and drag that down. So we've now got a second one. This time I'm going to use the length tool and I'm going to shorten that down. And what I'm going to do is break this template up into 3 bits. Now there are easier ways of creating chair rafts, and what I'm doing here, it works. It's probably not the best way of doing things, but given that we're working in something which is a smaller scale, these chair rafts are going to not be too big, so I'm going to do it in the manner I'm showing you here. So I'm just going to take a third copy. What I'll do in my next Plug Track videos, we'll show you how to create kind of minimal chair rafts with all of the chairs bunched together. But in this case, by doing it this way, I'm keeping the footprint of the chairs will match exactly what's on the laser cut timbering, and so this is going to be easy for John to put together. I won't need to label anything or give him any instructions. It'll all just be obvious. And this might be something that if you're messing around with Plug Track perhaps for the first time, this might be an approach that you could use, just because it simplifies things at this stage. There's less to remember. Okay, so I've created 3 copies and I've shortened those either using the blanking length tool or the length tool. Now what I'm going to do is come straight into the background shapes here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle around those switch chairs. So I've selected, I've told it I want to create a new rectangle. Let's just get that position so you can see it. And I want to put that new rectangle at the clicked locations. So I'm going to click once. You'll see a little crosshair appear. Click twice, come back to add the shape, and it's drawn the shape for me, which is great. So what I'm going to do now is, using the group tool, just drag a box around that template, and we're going to export just that template. I'm going to tell it that we want just the group templates, and we're going to preview. So this time we're going to preview it, and this will give us a like a 3D view, just to make sure that we're getting the chairs we want. And there we go. Let's close that little box down, and we can see those are the chairs we're after. They are the switch chairs. This is, I believe, a B switch. So that's all okay. So back into our export screen, I'm on support. We're going to leave all of that by the default, and under layers we're going to select the background shape layer, and I've just made that red. So let's export this now. You can see, there we go, the background shapes red. And the supports are on the default setting. Hit the export file. Give it a name. Now let's open that in 3D Builder. And there we go, where we drew the rectangle, that's given us a nice raft. So next up we need to obviously save 3 different rafts of those 3 different sets of chairs. I won't run through all of that, it's just a repeat of what I've just done. And what we can do is import them into our 3D printer's slicer software. So today I'm using Lychee, and just select those 3 files, click import. And it brings all 3 files all piled on top of one another on the bed of our sort of virtual 3D printer. So with the move tool I can now drag those and separate them out. Now clearly those rafts are far too spaced out and it's very wasteful. However, it's going to work for the purposes of this, and the rafts will make sense for John when I send them to him. So as I say, I'm not going to bunch them up in this video. Next time I'll show you a really good shortcut for bunching these things up, but there you go, they're now all ready to print. So this is where we're at. We've got ourselves the laser cut timbering base, and as a reminder this is 3mm scale, and as you can see 14.125mm gauge, quite small. And here are the chair rafts. Now as I mentioned earlier, this isn't the optimum way of spacing these things out, but it's how I did it for this example, because you can see they're all clearly laid out corresponding with how they will sit in the template itself. But the quality of these things really is impressive. I've no idea how well this is going to show up on screen. I may have to put some still pictures up. They don't photograph particularly well, but these things really are quite impressive. Really robust too. Despite this being 3mm scale and these chairs being really tiny, I've not broken a single one of them. They're really robust. Now this is all a bit of an example really, and I just wanted to sort of run through the whole process of creating a turnout and show you what was involved. But there you go, it's hopefully there's some food for thought there. So what we really need to do is have a look at the finished thing. And this is how the whole thing looks. I've sort of simulated this built up as it might be in the real world, so to speak. I've glued the timbers down and then afterwards broke away the outside of the fret to leave just the timbering in place, and then simply cut each plug off of the 3D prints and push them in. Now because this is 3mm scale and I haven't got any suitable rail, I've not put any rail on here, but I believe it's John's intention he's going to thread all the chairs on the rail in advance of plugging them in. This, as I said at the start of the video, was really just a demonstration of what is possible. So there you go, I hope that's some interest to you. I'll try and get some still shots that hopefully will be in focus and you can see just how tremendous this looks. I'm really pleased with it. So then, to wrap the video up, it's worth mentioning that in the week or so that I've been putting this video together, Martin has announced on Templot that the next version of Templot will have some further controls for the nibs and the snibs, so the process I've just shown you is already out of date. Now everything in this video I think will be useful to your understanding of how to use the new controls when they arrive in Templot. So if you're watching this at some future date and the software's been updated and it doesn't necessarily appear to follow, what I will do is I will make sure that the Templot sort of WordPress site that I showed you at the start of the video, I'll make sure that that is up to date. So there's a link for that in the video description here. You can go and click on there, have a little look, and hopefully all the advice that you need will be up to date. I'm going to try and maintain those pages, and as and when there are developments in Templot and things change and improve as they do over time, hopefully that will stay fairly up to date. Anyway, that's pretty much it from me for today. The next video is going to be yet another laser review. I've been sent another one, so we'll have a look at another machine. It's an atom stack machine, and then hopefully after that I might even get back to finishing some bits on Bexhill West. Anyway, till then, cheerio.